Another Real Talk with Pastor Aaron M. Fleming and myself, Steve Shetler. Good to be here on another Monday. Aaron, what is up? What's up with you?
Well, I think we ought to start off this episode by giving a shout out to some of our listeners who've gotten in touch with us.
Yeah, do it. Drop those names.
Okay. David up in Verona, Wisconsin has kindly contacted us and let us know that he's a listener.
Yeah. Hey, David, what's up?
Good to have you as a listener, David. Tony down in Mississippi near the Gulf Coast. Tony got in touch with us and said what's up and said he appreciated the show. So, Tony, good to hear from you. And Sean down in Fort Madison. Thanks for being a follower. And Sean actually gave us a share. I think Tony gave us a share as well.
Very nice.
So Tony and Sean, thanks for sharing the program. And we want to say to everybody else, if you want to shout out, you got to say something in the comments. Simply giving a like or a heart symbol, not sufficient.
I mean, we heart you.
We do. We do.
From the bottom of our
hearts. But we want to hear from you in the comments or a message in Messenger or whatever. So give us a shout out and we'll shout out to you. David, John, Tony, thanks for being listeners, guys. All right, now we need to dig into a vital topic, Steve.
Okay. Whoop, sorry.
Are you ready for a vital topic?
I am.
Have you ever been so right that you were wrong?
All the time. Wait a minute. I'm right all the time. I don't know if I'm right to the point of being wrong, but
well, it is possible to be so right that you're wrong.
Okay.
And I myself can't think of any examples from my own life, but I bet if my wife was here, she probably could. No, I want to. We've been talking the last couple of weeks about calling and trying to figure out what are the like at the heart of what my life is supposed to be about. What am I supposed to be doing here on planet Earth? Okay. And there's pitfalls that go along with that. Like, it's cool to discover that you have a calling, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to, in our next week, I'll be asking you some questions about how you got into music and kind of some of your calling is in the music. Okay. Has been in the music industry and having your own band, right?
Yeah.
Singing in church on Sunday, a variety of different things, but that wasn't an obvious path for you.
Yeah, no, yeah, like you said, we'll get into it, but yeah, it was not obvious. Yeah.
We'll get into that. So we usually start off small, but as we go along and we start to discover some things, that's pretty heady stuff. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, I have an important place in the world. And that kind of pulls us up out of the pit of despair and meaninglessness. But sometimes that goes to our head and we become so right that we're wrong.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this in relationships too. Just husbands and wives. Stop and think about that for a little bit. Have you ever been so right that you actually hurt the other person? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to make Steve... This is real talk, but I'm not going to make us... This is not true confessions.
Yeah. We need to have a little divider between us. Dear Aaron, I have sinned.
I can believe that. No, so I'm going to turn back to this fun book in the Bible that we've been looking at. It's called 1 Samuel. You can find that in the index of your Bible. Or, Steve, a lot of people are just reading the Bible on their phones these days.
Yeah.
There's a lot of apps out there.
Got the old Bible app.
Yep, get the Bible app, and you can read from different translations and find interpretation helps and all kinds of stuff.
Heck, you can have the Bible app read the Bible to you. If you're going down the road and you just want to hear however long your trip is, have the Bible read to you, do it that way too.
Yeah,
But it does help to actually, look at the words and maybe kind of absorb them that way. But
yeah,
regardless.
Although we also have a lot of friends who struggle with reading, who didn't enjoy school, maybe fell behind, and a lot of my friends in that situation feel bad that they can't read the Bible. So there's never been a better time in the history of the world to like, hey, I'm not very good at reading. Boy, can I fix cars, or boy, I can do this or that, but I can't read very well. Listen to it.
Yeah.
It all counts.
Yep.
So, Book of 1 Samuel, we're in chapter 2, and I promised a couple of weeks ago to talk about these some priests who were kind of stinkers, I think is the word that I used. Jerks.
Yeah, jerks.
Doofuses.
Fuddy-duddies.
So we're gonna start in chapter 2 with verse 11, and it goes like this. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah, but the boy, talking about Samuel, the boy ministered before the Lord under Eli the priest. And I just want our alert listeners to tuck that phrase into the back of their mind, because that's going to get repeated in the next chapter about 3 more times.
Okay.
So the boy, and if you recall from earlier in the story, this boy gets dropped off at the temple not long after being weaned. So he's 2 to 4 years old.
Okay.
And dropped off into the care of Eli and some other priests. And we're going to read about them right now. Verse 12. Eli's sons were wicked men. Keeping it real. Just bad guys. They had no regard for the Lord, which is kind of a problem when you're a priest, isn't it?
Yeah. You want your kids to be better than that.
Yeah, Riley and David. Don't be wicked. Now, it was the practice of the priests with the people that whenever anyone offered a sacrifice, and while the meat was being boiled, the servant of the priest would come with a 3-pronged fork in his hand. He would plunge it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot, and the priest would take for himself whatever the fork brought up. Okay. Now, we're getting kind of into the tall weeds here. I'm going to try to keep this simple, and we're not going to jump around to a whole bunch of different Bible passages. But we got the picture. We got a pot, and there's a bunch of pieces of meat in it. And it seems fair that the priest would get some of the meat, right? Because he's a full-time priest. He doesn't have a job. How is he going to feed his family? Well, he gets some of the meat. And the Old Testament law that God gave his people provided for the priests to get meat from the offerings, okay? And this seems fair. Like, stick a fork. I always have to remember which hand is visible on the screen. You stick a fork into the pot, and whatever comes up.
Mystery meat.
That seems fair, right?
Yep.
The problem is that that's not the way that God instructed the people to do it. So the people were doing it wrong. It seemed fair, but it was incorrect. And now we're going to read this. But even before the fat was burned, the servant of the priest would come and say to the man who is sacrificing, "Give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, but only raw." Which was God's instruction. And incidentally, as you think about what to get your pastor for Christmas, the portion prescribed by law for the priest was actually the brisket.
Oh.
So, just something to keep in mind. When you invite your pastor over for dinner, maybe brisket would be in order. Just got a little self-serving in here, didn't it? Sometimes you can be so right that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming back to our story here. If the man said, "Let the fat be burned up first and then take whatever you want," the servant would then answer, "No, hand it over now. If you don't, I will take it by force."
That's not very nice.
Yeah, but they were right.
Yeah.
They were supposed to get raw meat so that they could roast it or cook it however they wanted. But I wonder how many people wanted to go to that church.
Yeah.
If you don't put something in the offering plate, the priest servants will come and take it by force. So here's what we read. The sin of the young man was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. So this is a serious issue here. And it's just an illustration of how you can be so right that you become wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. How do we work that out in real life, Steve? Is this one we need to just think about for a week?
Probably. Sit and ponder on it for a little while.
Yeah. I gave a sermon just this last Sunday in which I told our congregation, I really can't tell you what to do about this issue. I think you just all need to go pray. So if you came to Real Talk this morning looking for a 3-step or a 6-step or a 12-step program for how to not be so right that you're wrong, I don't think we have any easy answers, which is kind of the way it is in life a lot of the times. There's not a lot of easy answers. You may need to sit down and think about this for a while. But I do know this, and I'm not so smart. I learned this from a book by a guy named Danny Silk. The title of the book is "Keep Your Love On," and it's basically about love being a choice. And he has some really deep wisdom about how to work on arguments, especially in a marriage. But it could go for an argument with somebody at work. Maybe how about in this election year? Maybe we could apply this to some of the arguments that we're having with people of the opposite political party. But Danny Silk said, we make a really big mistake when we think that the goal of an argument is to come to an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute, that sounds kind of backwards. If we're looking for unity, don't we want to be in agreement? But here's how he explains that. If the goal of our argument is agreement, then one of us is going to have to disappear. One of us is going to have to give up a position that is precious to us, and that's not going to feel good. And so we will be in agreement, so to speak. We'll have a form of unity that leaves half of the people not feeling very good. And I think we see that playing out in our political system all the time, right? We take a vote, and usually our votes are pretty close. I wish our media would stop saying that America is a deeply divided nation. I wish they would say America is a well-balanced nation.
There you go.
There's about 52%. Whoever run for president this year, the winner's going to get about 52%, and the loser's going to get about 48%. We are a well-balanced nation. But we feel like we have to disappear when agreement is the goal. So Danny Silk says the goal of our arguments or our conflict really ought to be understanding. So if Steve and I were to have an argument here, if I really felt like he understood me and he really felt like I understood him, maybe we wouldn't have to agree. Maybe we'd just be like, well, we're different people. I guess we can be friends even though we don't agree. So I think we could probably do that in our political system. I think we can do that in our marriages. We could do that with our kids. We can do that with our friends and the people we go to church with and the people we have to work with. So there you go.
Agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree, but we understand. I don't, and that's weird just to say, I understand you, but I don't agree with you. And if you really feel like I do understand you, I think we'll be okay. So I want to wrap up with this. We started this story about these kind of icky guys, and they're going to get worse. We're going to find out that not only are they seizing the offerings by force, but they're also sleeping with the women who are serving in the temple. And it's kind of like, the scandals that we see in churches today.
Sure.
The televangelist or whatever dipping their hand into the offering plate and fooling around with the secretary. Man, things haven't changed too terribly much over the last 3,000 years. But here's something else that hasn't changed. The first verse that we looked at said that the boy ministered before the Lord under Eli the priest. And this last verse says, but Samuel, while all this monkey business was going on, right? All this, forceful grabbing of the offerings and the sleeping with the women and all that stuff. But Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod. And the linen ephod just means that here's this little kid who is putting on the priestly garment and getting the job done no matter what. Ignoring the fact that all the people around him are being jerks and loudmouths and perverts and whatever it is. Here's a boy who just says, you know what, I'm here to serve God. And everybody else can do what they want to do, but I'm going to serve God. And that, my friends, is how I believe we really move into our calling in life. Whatever your calling is, if you do it for God and you ignore everybody else and refuse to be distracted, you're in your calling. Keep going for it. All right, I think that's probably it for this week, Steve. But we'll be back next week to hear some stories from you about your life in music, and I know some of these stories, so it's fun. It's going to be a good time. We'll see you all next week. Okay.